Capstone Action Research Project, Dustin Metz, American Military University, Dr. Mueller, May 19, 2022. When I was determining an action research topic, I wanted to find something that would have a direct impact on my teaching practices in my classroom. I wanted to improve not only their academic growth and reading scores, but their cognitive growth as well, including their ability towards self-regulation, self-efficacy, and self-esteem. Teaching a special education reading intervention class, some things I was already doing included setting goals for my students, introducing increasingly complex reading assignments, and recording and tracking student growth weekly. So I thought, how can I improve these current practices and grow student self-efficacy? Well, this led my attention towards studies and literature on student-directed learning strategies. Student-directed learning strategies include strategies like student goal setting and self-progress monitoring. Goal setting and progress monitoring are considered the first two steps in self-regulation. These processes give ownership of learning and academic progress directly to the student. So after doing some reading on this topic, I had to decide how to best implement this to meet my goals and write my research questions. I came up with two questions that could develop meaningful research and tie this topic into my classroom practices. Number one, does using student-directed learning strategies such as goal setting and progress monitoring increase student growth and achievement in a special education reading intervention classroom? And number two, do they increase student motivation and engagement? So on with my literature review. There was lots of literature and studies to be found on the topic of student-directed learning strategies. For this research project, I pulled 3 online articles: How to Guide Students to Self-Regulated Learning, Inspiring Progress Towards Learning Goals, Guiding Students to Set Academic Goals. And then I had 5 scholarly journal articles: Experiential Learning and Teaching in a Student-Directed Classroom, What Kind of Reader Are You? The Effects of Biology Laboratory Practices Supported with Self-Regulated Learning Strategies on Students' Self-Directed Learning Readiness and Their Attitudes Towards Science Experiments. These are my goals: academic self-regulation and reading by middle school students. Applying self-directed learning strategies on reading comprehension among junior secondary school students in Afwa Karo Estate, Nigeria. Then I had 3 books: Self-Directed Learning Research, An Imperative for Transforming the Educational Plane, Considerations of Implementing Student-Directed Teaching Supported Strategies in the School Setting, Self-Directed Learning Research and Its Impact on the Educational Practice. There was a lot of literature on the topic of student-directed learning, but I'll just share some of the highlights with you here. What are student-directed learning strategies? They're evidence-based strategies that include goal setting and self-monitoring. What is known about this topic? Goal setting and self-monitoring are the first steps to developing self-regulation. One article I found very interesting talked about the process of metacognition, which is the basis of student-directed learning. Metacognition is essentially thinking about thinking, or understanding our own thinking and learning processes. Metacognition occurs in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, but information is relayed from there to the nucleus accumbens, also known as the reward circuit, because it produces dopamine in response to rewarding experiences. Think about the feeling of accomplishment or satisfaction you get after completing a long and difficult task. What foundational research exists that is being used to drive instruction and/or policy? Traditionally, education was focused on following directions and memorization of information. This type of instruction was focused on preparing students for cookie-cutter standardized tests, but failed to prepare them with critical thinking and other skills necessary for success in a changing world. Early student-directed learning research focused on adult learners. However, a growing body of research has expanded across education from early childhood to tertiary education. What conflicting views exist? Some research has shown that not all students may be ready for student-directed learning, or some may be ready with some scaffolding. Student-directed learning should not be considered a cure-all for all students. For my research methodology, I chose a triangulated data approach by collecting both quantitative and qualitative data. Triangulated data collection does not rely solely on either quantitative or qualitative data, but instead tries to incorporate multiple types of data into the project. My first research question focuses directly on student growth as measured by quantifiable data in the form of reading fluency. My second research question focuses on qualitative data, which would be pulled from individual and student interviews and reflections. This data collection triangulation matrix kind of shows what types of data or data sources I'll be using for the different questions. For my first research question, I'll be collecting weekly student fluency assessments and using that to draw their student fluency growth charts. Data sources used for my second research question will come from student interviews and student reflections. Data collection tool number 1, reading fluency charts. Quantifiable data collected from individual fluency exams that will be used to determine student growth towards academic reading goals. Charts have already been created and tracked by the teacher throughout the year. But with the student-directed learning intervention, students will begin charting their own progress as self-monitoring. An ipsative analysis will compare students' growth rate before and after the implementation of the intervention to determine if the student-directed learning had a significant impact. Data collection tool number 2, individual interviews. Students will be interviewed weekly following their fluency test. During this time, they will reflect on their performance and the work they did the week before to get there. They will set a goal for the next week. Questions asked during this time will include: how do you feel about your growth this week? Do you think you did your best? What did you do to get better this week? What is your goal for next week? What will you do to reach this goal? Data collection tool number 3, student reflection sheet. Students will have a reflection sheet for each week in their workbooks. The questions will be the same as from the interview. Reflection sheets will require students to write their reflections and goals for the future. Workbooks containing fluency charts and reflection sheets will serve as an artifact that can be used at IEP or other team data meetings. Purpose or collaboration with colleagues. The purpose of this research is to improve my own classroom practices by incorporating evidence-based student-directed learning strategies. I want students to make significant progress towards academic reading goals, closing the achievement gap. I also want them to develop critical skills towards self-regulation and self-efficacy. I hope that my research will be transferable to other classrooms. Data analysis techniques. Quantifiable data will be analyzed using an ipsative analysis. This will be done by comparing growth rates of the fluency charts from before implementing student-directed learning to after the implementation to see if there is a significant change. Qualitative data from interviews and reflection sheets will be used to judge student engagement with student-directed learning strategies. Anticipated results. Students may see significant growth as a result of using student-directed learning strategies. If this is the case, we'll share this research with colleagues and work on ways to use this strategy in other educational areas. Also, we provide professional development training on student-directed learning strategies. Another possible result could be a student's attitude towards reading may be low because they do not enjoy the topics of the reading selections. If this is the case, we should complete a survey of the students' interested topics and find selections from readworks.org that may interest them. Another option would be to create a menu of reading selections that include some topics for pleasure and some topics for informative texts. Give the student the option of doing some from both categories. Another possible result is that students may struggle with setting realistic goals or may set goals that are too easy. They may struggle with identifying study strategies that helped them or that they missed during the reflection. In this case, the teacher will guide students through the process of goal setting during their personal interviews. Class will discuss study strategies to use to improve reading abilities. All right, research audience and methods to share. One research audience will be my fellow teachers and colleagues within my building or district. I could share my results with my immediate colleagues through professional learning communities and professional development sessions. Another research audience will be parents. I can use the artifacts created by the students in my research and their individualized education plan meetings to share and discuss the progress they have made with their parents and other team members. Another research audience will be the worldwide teaching community. I could share my research to build on the growing basis of research in the field of using student-directed learning strategies. Right. The next steps in my action research project first would be to determine the effectiveness of the intervention and determine if it needs to be modified or if it's meeting its desired purpose. Once I've decided that it's meeting its desired purpose, the next step would be to find ways to incorporate this intervention in other areas such as reading comprehension, math, etc. Lastly, share my research with other colleagues and the global community to inform them on the new practice and how to implement it. This concludes my presentation on my action research project on student-directed learning strategies. Please check out my references on the next couple slides. Thank you.